Hi, everybody. Welcome to Said Differently. This is the show brought to you by Troupe, and where we share experiences and ideas about B2B storytelling and messaging. I'm your host, Jennifer Sikora. I'm a founding advisor for Troupe, and I'm here to welcome our guest today, Eric Boduch, who is the CEO and founder of the startup studio 24 and Up, and always co-founder of Pendo and one of their first head of marketing. So excited to have you join us, Eric.
Thanks, Jennifer. I like that. First and always co-founder, or once and always co-founder. I guess that's a way to describe it for
Once
Pendo.
and always, but
Once and always.
did I say first?
No, I just did. You just said always a co-founder, and I
Oh,
I, I was thinking like once is much better. Once and always co-founder. I think kind
once
of
and
is
always. So there are four co-founders for Pendo, so we don't want to leave them out.
yes.
But yes.
Yeah.
So our topic today is one that I think you and I both have a lot of thoughts around, which is product marketing. Are they ready to be measured? Some will argue they are. Some will argue that they are measured. Others may say they're not adequately measured, but what has been your experience? Let's start with in your role as a marketing leader, what has been your take on the product marketing function in general and your experience working and hiring product marketing team members?
No, I think you bring up a good point when you talk about are they measured? Some would say they are, some would say they aren't. I would say it's always been difficult to measure the efficacy of a product marketing organization because it's been difficult to figure out what metrics you want to hold them accountable for, um, and therefore measure them and therefore grade them, right? And one might think this isn't a horrible thing for a product marketer, but it really is because you want to stand out. You want to be, if you have aspirations of being that VP of product marketing or moving to a larger company or being a CMO, you want to show why you're a rock star. You want to show why you excel. And without metrics to point to that say, oh, I crushed this number, it becomes difficult for that. And then it becomes a lot of subjectivity, and that becomes a challenge. It becomes a challenge to highlight your accomplishments at the C-suite, at the board level, and it becomes kind of a gut feel people have. Like, I think he or she's doing a great job, as opposed to I know they're doing a good job because look at how they move this metric.
Yeah, I know as a former and recovering CMO myself, when I had product marketers on my team, which was almost always, um, when it came time to, even just stepping back and thinking annually, as you start to plan for what are the goals for the organization, the marketing organization, but also what are the individual's goals on your team. And it came time to do goal setting for product marketing. It was always a challenge as a marketing leader about the accountability that you mentioned, Eric. Like what do we want to hold them account for? There are sort of straightforward things like competitive win rates. But then a lot of things ended up being what I call sort of deliverable oriented goals, which weren't really that meaningful, like X amount of analyst briefings, X amount of pieces of content, maybe helping to move the needle on SEO or things like that, right? But product marketing is there at that intersection between product marketing and sales, but there was often, other than the competitive win rate piece, very little tied to sales. So what did you typically do to put accountability? What did you measure? What did you have them measure?
I mean, I don't know that we did a great job, and some of the reason it was hard to get the data. We definitely looked at competitive win rates and always wanted to move those, right? But it feels like a sub metric, right? It's like
Right.
if win rate's the metric, and then competitive win rate's one of the metrics, and then you're relying on the data in your CRM system to be clean there. Was this really competitive? Was it not competitive? Were they tracking like? And that's often not tracked as effectively. So then you have to go and clean up the CRM and then do the analysis. Um, it's an okay metric, I think, for product marketing. And in lieu of having nothing, it's a good metric to measure product marketers against. Um, I might argue that why not just measure them against win rate? And I can
Mhm.
see the salespeople and the CEOs maybe pushing back and saying, well, there's so many impacts on win rate. And that's true,
Yeah.
but I would argue really strong messaging, really strong brand story, really strong sales enablement that you're getting out of the product marketing group is a huge impact on that. And if all things are equal, maybe it's not about necessarily tracking the absolute number, but the trending of the number, right? If you have a
Mhm.
new product marketing leader in place or a new team in place, or you're rolling out new messaging or telling a new brand story, okay, how does that impact our win rate overall? Has it gone from 10% to 20%? Well, that's a huge improvement. And if
Yeah.
the sales team was relatively consistent, the product was relatively consistent, that shows you that product marketing had a huge impact on that. And I'd even argue you can kind of gloss over some of the other stuff. It's harder to do, but like we were chatting earlier in prep for this about it's football season now.
Yeah.
Just kicked off. Eagles beat the Cowboys last night. I'm sure that'll date this a little bit. Um, but I think of messaging a little bit as play calling, right? Are you calling the right plays? And you still need the team to execute. Maybe the quarterback is, the CEO, and maybe the line or the salespeople or the wide receivers or marketing. You still need people to execute, right? Um, but if the play calling is right, you're more likely to execute. You're more likely to get those conversions. And maybe a conversion from one step to the other is this, first down, and a win and close deal is a touchdown. So you can start thinking about, and maybe I'm taking this analogy a little too far,
No,
but you
I
can start
actually,
thinking about that, right?
yeah,
You can see that good
yeah,
play calling, and like good messaging could have a
yeah.
huge impact on your ability to score wins.
I'm right there with you on this analogy. I think it's a good one. It of course, ties into Troupe and what we're all about, which is that this is a team effort. This is a collective effort, right? We're all in this together to put on this ability to move things along in terms of the story, but also in terms of the end goal. But yeah, the win rate is the ultimate outcome, right? That's where you land, but it's all the steps before then. It's all like, where are you moving the ball? What are the different plays you're going to call? I love that analogy, and certainly something we map in Troupe, which is, how does that messaging journey look across the buyer journey? um so what how would you see in practice, how would product marketers then, measure that? If it's not just win rate, what else would you be having them measure? Here's a good example. We spoke with a head of marketing recently who said their marketing team is doing a great job bringing leads into the top of the funnel, but where they're struggling is after that initial discovery call that sales gets, moving it to the next stage. So, is that an opportunity for product marketing? It should
I
be,
mean, I
right?
think, yeah, absolutely. There's messaging, there's content, there's brand story at every stage of a cycle. So how you execute in converting people from stage one to two, two to three, three to four, four to a closed one deal, all of those things should be impacted by your messaging, by your brand story, by your product marketing team, and making sure they're enabling sales to move people between those different stages of the cycle. Um, and those might be, going back to the analogy, the first downs or the touchdowns. Maybe the win rate is, winning the game, right? That's the football analogy. Maybe you take it that far, but yeah, absolutely. Product marketing should be helping in every stage of the cycle, right? Your messaging should be helping. Your salespeople should know what to do, what to say at
Yeah.
every stage of the cycle to, move that deal along, move that football down the field.
I mean, part of, I think, I'm going to be a little bit provocative here, well, maybe said differently. I won't say provocative. I'll say maybe I'm going to kind of throw out a little bit of a challenge here, which is that product marketing may be very attentive to putting content together, putting some messaging guidance together, and even executing some training with sales enablement, but it can't stop there, right? Like, you can't just like let it go. And So what does product marketing need to do to make sure that they're tapped in and plugged in across the journey? Because that feels very overwhelming. That feels like, how do I have time for that? How do I have bandwidth for that? How
Well,
do I?
I mean, that was the big struggle, and that's why AI and software products like Troupe, I think, could be of a huge help. Is like, can you track how well people are executing on your plays, on your product marketing, right? How well
Yeah.
are they doing? Where is it falling down? Where is it not? Who needs, in the case of sales, who might need a refresher on the messaging? In the case of marketing materials, maybe ones that are out of date have old messaging, or have messaging just isn't working that well, right?
Mm.
And how you can fix those things, whether it's updating the out of date messaging or adjusting the messaging that's not working.
That's a really, I'm going to dig into something you just said there, which is there a fear that it will reveal that messaging isn't working well? And then there's this sort of, oh no, marketing is now in the hot seat, right? Like, how do you get away from that sort of
Well, I mean,
mentality?
it is, but I think good marketing teams should want that visibility and that transparency. And in fact, I think it's good for them because that visibility and transparency is what gives the C team and the board confidence in them, because they can see it and they can see what they're doing to fix problems, to adjust, to improve. Because a business isn't just about doing everything perfect. It's about understanding what's not working perfect and fixing those things and making them better. um, and tying all the way around it. That's what gets people promoted into those C-level or leadership positions. It's not that I know exactly what I'm doing and it's always perfect. No, it's about I know how to I understand my business, I understand the data, I understand where it needs to be improved, and I'm going to do that. So I think that's very applicable. I mean, I would love a product marketing leader if I was a CEO that came in and said, "Hey, this is how I'm going to improve our win rate," and gave me a real story behind it and told me how they were going to track it and what they were going to do. That would make me have a lot of confidence in them and in that piece of the organization.
Yeah. So, sort of to summarize, you believe the way product marketing should be measured. Like, let's get into specifics. What are the specific KPIs you would give them?
I mean, I love win rate. I mean, I would love someone to challenge me on that. A product marketer person challenge me and say, "Hey, I can make this better," right? Whether I was the CMO or whether I was the CEO of a company. Um, I love conversions on the different steps of the cycle. I think that's really important.
Especially
Um,
if there's a particular area in that cycle where the drop off is
Yeah,
concerning.
where they're struggling, right? I'm like, I'd want them to know, like, here's struggles, right? I'd look at this as like a trend line as opposed to an absolute number. Like, I want them to improve things. I don't want them to say, we're at 20%, that's great. Like, no, no, I want, like, we were at 15 and now we're at 20, or we're at 20 and now we're at 25. We're constantly improving. And I'd like to know, especially if we dig into some of those sub metrics, that, we're winning more often than we're losing against our competition, right? For instance. And I think that's a solid sub metric too on win rate, to call out, is like how we're doing in competitive deals. Um, I think all of those things are really important. And if they have the data to back that up, right? Like, one of the things that I think would be really powerful to see is that the salespeople who are consistently saying the right thing at the right time are winning more deals, right? Or
Mm.
moving things from
Yeah.
stage 1 to 2 more often, right? That makes me think that the messaging is solid, is good,
Yeah.
right? Because people that are going rogue or going off the rails, aren't doing as well. So then I have confidence my product marketing team is enabling the salespeople and putting in place the right messaging, because the people that are doing it right are closing more deals than the people who are doing it wrong.
Yeah. Love it. And in our prep call, you even put some real numbers, revenue numbers behind this as a for example, which is like, we're talking about, in those early stages, if you can move a win rate from, 50, or sorry, conversion rate from one stage to a next, top of the funnel, from, let's say, you know, 15 to 25 or 15 to 20. I mean, walk us through some of that math. I mean, it's huge.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it can be complicated or it begins simple math, right? If you start at like, hey, our landing page with the updated messaging is now getting 20% of the people to sign up for demos versus 10. Now all of a sudden you have twice as many people to sell, right? Um, so before, if everything else is consistent, a program that was selling 5 million now is selling 10 million, right? I mean, just huge math, huge increases. And usually when people are missing, it's around the edges, right? That 5 million is probably the difference between crushing your numbers and missing them. Similarly on win rates, if you have $10 million of deals at the final stage of a pipeline in a quarter, and your win rate of that final stage is normally 30%, and now you pushed it up to 40, you have an extra $1 million, right, coming in. Like, the larger the company, the bigger impact. But people should not underestimate the percentage impacts of moving those numbers. I mean, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
And then that rolls all the way up to valuation. If you're a startup, right?
Yeah.
If you're being valued at, say, 15 times revenue, having 5 million versus 10 million revenue, big difference, right? That ends up being 75 million of market cap versus 150 million, like huge numbers.
Yeah. I love it. I think you also made the great point about the path of product marketing to the CMO seat, right? Which maybe that's a less common path, right? But can the accountability help more of them get there?
I think absolutely. I mean, I had a conversation with Joe Chernov, ex Pendo, now over at Battery, about this, and he thought about his team at the time and the fact that a lot of his lieutenants from other areas outside of product marketing were making the CMO suite faster, right? We're getting that job faster.
Growth
Um,
marketing, revenue marketing, demand gen.
Demand,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, all of those areas, just because they can point to metrics and success easier. Um, he argued that having stronger metrics and stronger software systems and stack behind product marketing is going to enable them to jump into that C-suite more often and at a quicker pace.
So
I agree. I mean, right?
said differently, I'm going to tap into the theme of this video. Product marketers should fear not about being held accountable to more metrics. They should invite it and welcome it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate your time on the chat today. It was very awesome to talk about product marketing specifically, and putting some more ideas out there about how we can have stronger measurement and stronger pointers to their success. So